On the Earth. I think it's on the whole Earth. Saturn also went retrograde since we've last spoken in Sagittarius. Now that's bringing up some interesting stuff under the whole guideline of something called authenticity. If you are not squeaky clean, if you tell me something is pink and you know darn well it's red, I'm going to call you on it because they're two different spectrums. So be careful about looking at truth and honoring whatever is truthful. Okay, I want to talk a little bit here about triggering and what to do about it, and how actually I believe the flying stars in feng shui, as far as I did a lot of contemplation this morning. I really gave this a great deal of thought. So as far as I can understand, there are actual zones in Chinese, all right, they call it the flying star. I think I'm seeing it now from a different perspective, and it's all about triggering. So the psychological effect of being triggered by an external event is something now we're all hearing a great deal about. Everybody's triggered. It's like everybody's got a trigger finger, to the point where it's become mainstream. And the concept is really quite simple. It's someone says or does something that causes in the triggered individual a negative emotional response so powerful that they feel it's debilitating. It's like, imagine yourself being offended to such a degree that you feel emotionally unable to cope. I think triggering rose to great ascended heights after the results of the presidential campaign. I really hope nobody's still being triggered by that, but if indeed they are, they should be really paying close attention today, because that kind of meltdown is detrimental. So one of the first things here is the trigger is not the problem. It's the symptom. The trigger is actually doing you a massive favor, no matter how unwelcome it seems. The trigger, its role is to point you to something inside yourself that is needing love and healing attention. When we continue to reside in a state of oblivious ignorance of our own psycho-spiritual trauma, our higher self actually contracts for a trigger to bring that trauma to your conscious awareness so that it can be healed. You stepped onto this planet to do a whole lot of healing, kids. Spiritual children. Now, we're all spiritual. People tell me that they're spiritual and this one's not. No, that is insane. We're all spiritual. Spiritual children. So there's like spiritual children, there's spiritual adolescents, and there's spiritual adults. So spiritual children feel that when they feel the pain of a trigger, they demand that the trigger must change. If you feel triggered by someone, then that is absolute proof in the spiritual children's thinking that that other person or situation is evil and that must change. So that's how the immature person looks at it. They insist that their triggering is in and of itself objective proof that the trigger is the problem. And then they proceed to escalate their sense of displeasure over the issue until they see the trigger silenced or removed from their awareness. This is along the lines of people who tell me, oh, they have such bad vibe. I can't stand their vibe. They're evil. I got to get away from them. I want nothing to do with them. I hate to tell you, those of you who are saying that, you are a spiritual child and extraordinarily spiritually immature. When we get away from this situation, it actually resolves nothing, since the real problem, which is in you that needs the healing, remains unresolved and unaddressed and unhealed in the deepest recesses of your psyche, the shadow side of you. So this means that the triggered individual will then need to be contracted again for further future triggering, which in turn means that your pain will only become more and more extreme, exacerbated, and debilitating until everywhere you look and everyone you meet in one way or another triggers you. A jingle comes on the radio and you're triggered. A person looks at you cross-eyed and you're triggered. And these are minor things. You can only imagine when something of import or seriousness occurs. If you do not come to a new decision about yourselves and about life and about your own rigid attachment to your own victim consciousness, that's what you're carrying around when you're going down this insane triggered pathway that something outside of you must change. It's victim consciousness. I guarantee you will eventually find yourself locked into a constant state of meltdown, a nonstop, unrelenting panic attack. And unfortunately, it is what it is. And so if you don't wish to have this pain, you better take a good look at it. Know that your own higher self, the essence that I just spoke to Jean about, that source energy inside of us, that's giving you the trigger as an act of love toward you. And it's actually contracting these experiences simply because there is no other kinder, gentler way than has ever been found to cause those of you who are rigidly attached to your victim beliefs to choose of your own accord to reevaluate those beliefs and to release them. Only you can release your stuff. I could talk to you every day. I could walk next to you. I could massage your back. No, you've got to do the work. As the triggered individual evolves their consciousness, so, okay, you're learning that you've got to do the work. Well, that's the first mark that you're growing into adolescence. You're raising your insight and understanding by coming to new beliefs about yourself. And you begin to use these trigger points as a tool to see into the hidden parts of your psyches. If I feel triggered, there must be something within me of which I am unaware that needs healing. That is what the advanced, the spiritually advanced soul says. So when the spiritually advanced soul figures they've been triggered, they immediately go to, let me take a look at me. There's something I'm not aware of. There's something now that has an opportunity to heal. Spiritual adults experience these triggers as unpleasant blessings. They're not a joyride. We don't enjoy them. But we do bless them with gratitude as they made us do the work of our own healing. You can go to all the healers you want to on the planet. Until you buckle down and do you, it's a temporary fix. And we don't like to know that. We're a bit lazy as a group. I want to believe that you can fix me. Wrong. So as a spiritually mature soul takes ownership of what's happening. They affect that healing, and they continue to evolve their understanding, and they gain greater clarity. Why would you want to do that? Because you then come closer to knowing yourself to be that eternal, immortal being of limitless creative power. So that's kind of putting a big bow on Jean's question to me. There it is. As she matriculates very rapidly and steps into her role as the mature spiritual being. Well, holy smokes, everything just, you see it from a different light. It's kind of like there's this brilliance, and it matches the light that is now emanating from you. So the next time you feel triggered, would you please take what is called a time gap between the trigger and your response? Because this time gap allows you to step into your big shoes of the spiritual adult. So instead of simply reacting to the trigger, you see if you can stop and give the event some consideration. Ask yourself how and why you brought this experience to yourself. You are the creator, after all. You've brought it all to yourself. You've brought the good, the bad, and the ugly. My point is, how long do you want to stay wallowing in the miscreations and not take accountability and responsibility for shifting your own miscreation? Ask yourself, what can you learn from the trigger? Ask yourself if there is a divine decision that you can take about yourself so that you might not, in the future, have a violent response to the trigger. Because more often than not, when you're responding, it can be very violent, if not in actual actions, in your thoughts, which is every bit as bad. I was speaking with a wonderful woman yesterday, and life was triggering something in her. And how did she phrase it? It was so startling. I had to stop the conversation and point it out to her. It actually invoked death unwittingly. It was that strong. So, but she was responding to a trigger, like life wasn't behaving the way she thought. I think it was something like, I'm deathly sick. Or, here it is. I'm sick to death of da-da-da-da-da. So the trigger had been pushed. Her response was sick to death. Well, any of you who have studied with me, you'd know I would be like fallen over. But the antenna went right up, and as soon as we both recovered and she came up for air, we had to replay it. Now, her point was, well, I didn't mean it. Yeah, wrong. The gusto with which something is said is how we're creating our stuff. So I fully believe by being accountable to a comment like that and recalibrate it, go right on into those words and apologize to your body that you assaulted it with such venom, case closed. And you don't need to keep apologizing to your body. One apology is sufficient. I'm so sorry, body. But it has to be done with deep intent and deep reverence and respect to what you caused. You can heal, and you can overcome your triggers. You need to know that. And I don't care whether you're what I'll call a crawl-in, like you're just an infant in this work, or an adolescent or an adult. At every stage, we can